Fawzia Koofi began her political career after the fall of the Taliban government in late 2001. Her focus? Promoting the right to education of girls and protecting children from violence, exploitation, and abuse. She has survived several assassination attempts, but not even that stopped her from passionately advocating for the rights of women in her country. Koofi was born in the northeastern Badakhshan region of Afghanistan in 1975. She had a difficult childhood. Rejected by her family for her gender, she had to overcome many obstacles. Yet, despite these challenges, she rose to become Afghanistan's first female Deputy Speaker of Parliament. Some even considered her a potential candidate for the Afghan presidency. Now, with the Taliban back in control and in the wake of the US withdrawal, Koofi left the country and is now hosted in Qatar. But is her fight for the rights of Afghan women over? Afghanistan's former Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Fawzia Koofi, talks to Al Jazeera. Fawzia Koofi, former Afghan Deputy Speaker of Parliament, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you for having me.
Afghanistan has seen conflict for more than 40 years, from the Soviet invasion in the late 1970s to the rise of the Taliban in the 1990s, and of course, the US invasion of 2001. You have personally witnessed all these changes. Now, the US troops are gone. The democratically elected President Ashraf Ghani fled the country, and the Taliban have taken over once again. What is your assessment?
Unfortunately, what has happened lately in Afghanistan is unbelievable for most of the population that live in that country. After 20 years of blood and treasure investment, not only by international friends and partners, but also by the people of Afghanistan, who have been in the full front of protecting, liberties and gains, to see everything collapse in such a rapid manner was heartbreaking, personally for me as well, because I was part of all of this. I was, in a way, contributed to everything that has happened in the last 20 years in Afghanistan. To see everything collapse so rapidly, I think was something that was terrifying for most of the people in Afghanistan. I think a lot of mistakes by international community in Afghanistan resulted to where we are. I would firstly, put the blame on international community, especially the United States, because they were the one who actually favored the president, Ashraf Ghani. In 2014, he didn't win the election. It was the other side, Dr. Abdullah, who was the winner. But they, in a political agreement, they gave him the elections. He was favored in the first 5 years. This was one of the most corrupt government, power-centric. In 2019, 2020, again they gave him the elections, and he was elected as president with very, very low percentage of voters. That indicated that he is not popular, but the world continued to support him. And I think lack of vision, lack of leadership, corruption, all of that resulted in collapse of the institutions.
What do you make of President Ghani leaving the way he did?
I feel sorry for somebody who claimed to represent a nation and leaving without even facing a real threat. The Taliban were not in Kabul. There was talks that there will be a political deal of to establish an interim setup, as a result of which then he will leave. I think if he only dared to stay another few weeks, we would have not faced the situation of collapse as we did now. And I think it was because of his mistake of leaving the country the way he did, and rumors of taking millions of dollars with him motivated a lot of people also to go to the airport. From day one, I had the view that he is a baseless politician, that he does not have strong roots in Afghanistan. He came with a bag, and I have I was listening to my speeches in the parliament the other day, and I exactly said this in 2014 when he was elected. I said, those who come with the bags will leave with a bag. And exactly that's what happened. He actually came with a bag and then left Afghanistan in miserable situation with a bag.
Have you talked to President Ghani since he left?
No, I don't want to talk to him. There is no reason to talk to him. He must be embarrassed of what he did.
You were part of the negotiating team representing the then Afghan government at the intra-Afghan talks. You yourself met with the Taliban in Moscow and Doha. The talks clearly failed. What went wrong?
I have been engaged with Taliban now for 3 years because I knew that it's only through negotiation and engagement that we could represent a different Afghanistan that Taliban should adopt. I was representing the state and not the government. This was a team that was diverse in many ways, representing different groups and political community of Afghanistan. I think one of the things that the Americans did was they talked with Taliban, had an agreement with them without engaging the state of Afghanistan. That already put Taliban in a victorious mode. And especially after the US president announcement that he will withdraw without any conditions, which was in contradiction to what the Doha agreement said, the Doha agreement of Taliban and the United States, that put Taliban in a position that they did not see the need for negotiation.
Following the US-Taliban deal, everyone had hoped that there was going to be a clear path to peace. Why did it never happen?
As stated before, I think the reason that we could not get to a speed that was required and to a result-oriented negotiation was because in the Doha agreement the Taliban signed, it was clearly mentioned that by April 2021, after a political settlement is agreed upon, the United States forces will leave. However, when the elections in the United States happen and the government assessed, the new administration assessed its policy and then announced that they're going to withdraw unconditionally, no matter what, in a situation which already there was a escalating violence in Afghanistan, war was already active in many provinces. People in our army and security forces were extremely tired, not only of the war, but also the corruption. They were not paid for months. They have not had the chance to meet their family, visit their family for months. So all of that, combination of all of that, unfortunately, resulted to a situation where a military takeover was an option.
How do you assess the quick Taliban takeover? It took them about 10 days to take control of the country and the US troops were still present.
Right, because nobody fought them. In many places, the police and army actually surrendered themselves to them. In some other places, the security forces flee without even Taliban presence. In some of the places that I represent, Taliban came a day or 2 days later, the security forces flee the country. I think because, as I said before, corruption, but also because morally, our troops were so connected and dependent to international forces, especially the US forces, that when the United States forces fled from Bagram Air Base, which was the main base of the US in Afghanistan, the same day, I remember, I was in Doha, the same day, a lot of forces from my area flee to Tajikistan. That indicated how dependent they were trained. So that lack of morale and dependency was the reason for corruption and lack of course, leadership from the Kabul, because he was a president which was only centered to palace, didn't know what's going on in the country, was not able to present a vision for our forces or for the country, was not able to be connected. And all of this, I think, resulted in a very rapid takeover of Taliban.
There was a disconnect between the central government in Kabul and the rest of the country.
Absolutely.
Abdullah, the former chief executive officer of Afghanistan, insisted on this show back in July that the republic was going to prevail. Now, have you talked to him since the Taliban takeover?
Yes, I was in Kabul. We had the chance to meet a couple of times. He was in Kabul with some other politicians. The Republic will prevail in a way. I still insist in what he said, because I think over the past few years in Afghanistan, true that buildings have been built, infrastructures have been built, etc. But one of the things that people do not report about is the transformation of generation, a generation that wants to live in, in harmony and peace, in a prosperous and better life in Afghanistan. They want to have a say in their future. The first day Taliban came, 2 days later, a small group of women came to the street protesting for asking for rights. Now that was a very small number, but comparing to the fact that back in 2001 or 1999, this was impossible. That was an indication of, the transformed generation. Women continue to appear on media, although the offices were closed, but women still wanted to go to the office. I have seen many women who went to their offices, but their offices were closed. That is an indication of, the people's power, the people's participation, and their willingness to be heard and to be part of the political process.
So this is a new generation.
It is.
Many say it's a new Taliban as well. Do you think the two will be able to coexist?
There is no other way than coexistence. The country already has been in war for over 4 decades. Most of us, unfortunately, are born in war and grew up in war and probably will die in war. This is not fair. It's a country full of natural resources and wealth, young population, so much resources there, so many things that could contribute to a better world. So I think the only chance is coexistence and accepting the fact that we can have political differences. Political difference should not be the reason to kill other human beings.
On August 16th, President Biden said that American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves. What do you say to that?
In principle, true. In principle, we are a nation that have already and always fought for our liberty and sovereignty. Afghanistan has probably paid the highest price standing against these foreign occupations. However, I guess, in 2001, when the US and other NATO allies came to Afghanistan, no one in Afghanistan invited them. They came because their own security was at risk. And they left because they thought their security is not anymore at risk, leaving Afghanistan in a miserable situation that we are witnessing. People trying to queue and hang themselves in the plane, knowing that they will die 100%, is an example of how desperate the country is and how miserable the situation of the people are. So they came because they wanted to come. They left without consulting the people of Afghanistan. Now, my fear would be is that Afghanistan once again is not used for another military extremist growth that will eventually pose a threat to the world security. I hope not, but from what I see, a growing threat and lack of rule of law, lawlessness, all this chaotic situation already paved the way for the growth of another military extremist group. We know that ISIS, for instance, already committed 2 attacks at the airport very close to American forces.
What will your message to President Biden be?
To President Biden, I guess everyone, all the politicians, they try to prioritize their own people. That's their right. He did prioritize what he thought his version of American first was, an American interest first. But I think by abandoning Afghanistan, the real threat that the US security and national security could be at risk sooner or later is there. So my message would be they should continue to work with people of Afghanistan. They should continue to support the people of Afghanistan, because it is not only about us, it's about us and the world.
Qatar hosted the intra-Afghan talks, hosted Taliban officials at the request of the US, and has played an active role in helping over 40,000 Afghans leave the country. How do you see the role Qatar has played in Afghanistan in recent years?
Qatar has, been increasingly engaged in the regional politics. I guess the fact that now they have been hosts for inter-Afghan negotiation for a year. Now that at difficult times they are hosting a lot of Afghans whose lives are at risk if they stay home, is an indication of the fact that they want to be relevant. And I think, going forward, I think they will even play a more important role, and there is a room for them to play a more important role in reconstruction, I would say, or development of and humanitarian aid to the people of Afghanistan. Now, I don't know what will the future government look like. No one, I guess, at this stage knows what ideal situation would be if we have a government which is broad-based, which is inclusive, representative of the the people of Afghanistan, the transformed generation of Afghanistan, and on the basis of democracy, on the basis of people's choice. And if we have such a government, I think the Qatari government and its people role will be more relevant, because then we will have a stronger partnership in terms of using each other's connectivity for each other's interest, etc. But however, there are threats and risks, real risks, that probably Taliban will not be willing to accept coexistence and power sharing arrangement in a way that it is truly representative and meaningful participation of the rest of community, including women. In that case, I think Qatar still can play an important role in using its leverage to pressurize Taliban for a continued reform in their policies and listening to the people, especially to the women.
Well, let's now talk about women, as you mentioned, and about you, of course, in your life's work. Into your 2012 memoir, The Favored Daughter, you talk about the hardship of being a woman in Afghanistan, and you describe how your parents rejected you because of your gender, and how the day you were born, you were left out to die in the sun. You survived and became Afghanistan's first female deputy speaker of parliament. What kept you going? What was your motivation?
The fact that I have suffered so much as a woman, and my mother suffered so much as a woman, and I have seen every woman that carried the burden of what's going on in the country, kept me moving forward. What I have seen during the time, the first round of Taliban in power, gave me the reason to come to politics. Although my father was a member of parliament, but this was not what I wanted to be. But what I have gone through as a woman gave me the reason to change things for others. Because I know that it's actually the women who always have to pay the highest price. It's the women and the girls. If it's war, they lose their loved ones. If it is peace, they lose the opportunities. It's always the women that have to pay the first. And I have just, been in contact, have met women who are desperate, hopeless. They don't know what will happen to them. Most of them were dependent on salary. They were the breadwinners of their families. They lost that. A lot of them actually are in terrified situation, hiding. Why? Why should the woman only pay all of this in any circumstances and situation? It's heartbreaking. I think the world should wake up. Why should we always pay for everything that goes wrong in that country?
There are some people who believe that Taliban's rule this time around will be different. And in fact, there are some who believe that the Taliban should be given a chance. What's your take?
Well, they need to prove that they are different. I have discussed with some of their leadership here in Kabul. They say, yes, give us time, we will be different. But when it comes to their foot soldiers or commanders or the second layers of the Taliban, they do the same things that they were doing 20 years back. In the provinces, for instance, in the heat of the summer, when they captured some of the provinces, they ask women, young students, girls, to wear burqa and wear socks. Can you imagine if in that heat, if a woman is wearing burqa? And plus, burqa is not Islamic. It's not just a hijab. It's more than a hijab. Or for instance, in many places, they keep saying that girls cannot go to, or any woman cannot go out without a male companion. I think their leadership really has to do an important homework in making sure, first of all, that whatever generic statements and press releases they have and policy papers, their foot soldiers from top to the ground respect that. So it doesn't become just a media statement, but actually a practice on the ground.
Do the Taliban that you've been in contact with have any plans or ideas about how to include women in their government?
Well, that's what we hope. We hope that they should not and they cannot ignore the 55% of the population which are women. Economically, it's not something that they can take the risk, or they should take the risk. But in the meantime, I think from what I'm hearing, they already kind of started dividing the cabinet ministerial position because they think women are not for that. These are positions that women do not qualify. Probably lower level woman or civil servant. I think if women are not in the power structure, if they are not in the decision making, in the leadership, how can you make policies that are friendly for women? How can you make environment friendly for women? So I think it has to start from leadership. It has to start from top. And plus, I must say that in the past 20 years, women I'm so proud of them because they have really proven that they're the most hardworking, talented population of the country. They have grabbed any opportunity that was there for them. Education, despite the difficult circumstances. If you give them little chance, they will use it. And so therefore, I think it's not only for political reasons, for economic, social, and many other reasons that women should be part of a meaningful decision-making process.
When you became a prominent figure in Afghanistan's political stage, your name was floated around in discussions whether Afghanistan was ready for a first female president. Is all hope lost?
No. I still believe that we have to give Afghanistan the chance, and we have to give women of Afghanistan that chance. I'm sure Afghanistan will be so different if a woman represented. And it's not the first time in any Muslim country that women are in the leadership. If you look at the neighboring country, Pakistan, they had the first female prime minister in the Muslim world, I guess. Many Muslim countries have women leaders. Why do some of these men think that only by oppressing women that they are true Muslim? It's wrong. We want to have Islamic rights within Islamic principles. We want to, grow and survive and empower ourselves.
You left Afghanistan voluntarily. Why did you not stay?
I don't think it was any more a choice or voluntary. I think it was a matter of where one could be more efficient to be able to serve others. Yes, I wanted to stay, and I stayed almost for more than 2 weeks in Kabul, but at some point I realized that it's not going to be any more efficient, because if we disconnect with the world, how can I help other women? So the reason I wanted to get out was to be able to connect with the rest of the world and see how we can support other women, the ones that are staying in Afghanistan, 35 million population, and the ones that need to be transferred to a safer place until Afghanistan is safe again. So all of that will have not been able to achieve if I was only in the corner of my house. I'm going back, that's for sure. I'm not somebody who will live abroad or stay abroad or enjoy a luxurious life abroad. My heart is torn into pieces. All of the pieces are in different provinces of Afghanistan.
When do you think you'll go back?
As soon as I have the opportunity.
You were under house arrest in Kabul before you left?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what were the circumstances around that? How did that come about? What were they afraid of, the Taliban?
Well, I don't know what were they afraid of. Probably some of them told me that because as a result of the quick takeover, 30,000 prisoners, among them some criminals, are also released, so we are worried about the security. But in the meantime, I know that they were there for controlling. So it was a chaotic situation. There was no government. Every part of Kabul was controlled by somebody. And so many people were advising me that my friends and family, that until the time things a little bit settle down, better to be in a place which you could survive and then come back. Although it was a very, very difficult choice for me. It was hard to make that decision, but I'll take it as if I'm here for a very short period of time.
The Taliban, of course, are going to face many challenges, and one of them is the new generation of Afghans, you've already mentioned, who are not used to living under their rule. What do you think is going to happen moving forward?
If the Taliban try to impose what they want in terms of oppressing people, depriving them from their liberties, limiting the liberties, including on women, I think they will face opposition. I think they will face resilience. I think people will resist.
What's your message to the Afghan people and those both who have fled the country and those who remain, especially to women?
For those who have fled the country, I'm sure they will come back. From the love and affection that I have seen, including the time that I'm in Doha, everyone is even not able to believe that they are not anymore in their country, and they're homeless, I would say. Thanks to the Qatar government, because they have given already the feeling of being home. To those who are in Afghanistan, I think they will continue to be relevant. My message to them is be relevant, take the future in your hands. I will join you soon.
Fawzia Koofi, former Afghan Deputy Speaker of Parliament, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you.